Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome back to another episode of the Waffle Press Retrospectives. I'm your host, Diego Crespo. We're here to talk about the failed Blockbusters Season 2, winding down the season with my co-host, Matt Garingo.
Hey,
Matt, how are you?
I'm doing great. We talked for
Uh,
like an hour and a half before we started recording.
I know. It's fine. It's fine. It was about important stuff,
Yeah.
like Jay Leno
we talked
and his dead legacy.
we talked about Jay Leno and his dead eyes. His just massive chin. Talked about Logan Paul. Talked about streaming. Um, well, let's check in on the Warner Brothers stock.
Oh yeah.
uh,
Oh, I actually know this one. It's down 2.75 billion dollars.
it's been going like up and down like massive in the last few days.
Yes, but they are operating at like a mega loss right now.
Yeah, it looks like at let me look in the last because in the last day it's been just going up and down, so it looks like there's been a gross, but yeah,
Hmm.
it's down like 60%.
Which is even funnier because if you have been paying attention to the news, the actual like revenue they wanted to like be able to kind of cut away fat wise, like production cost wise, they wanted to cut out like $3 billion worth of production costs in various different departments, right? And they've almost lost $3 billion.
Hey,
I'm sure everyone's really happy about that.
I'm sure that's how this is all working so well.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's funny, it's all dropping, even though they've technically shown a revenue increase of over 200%,
Hmm.
but the net income is still down 600%. So uh, they're not doing too great.
No.
It couldn't have happened to a better company.
You know who is doing great?
Paul Verhoeven.
Paul Verhoeven's Starship Troopers, which we are here to talk about today.
Movie itself is doing great.
I mean, it's predicting the future, which is great
Oh,
for
we're
it.
not saying that. We're not gonna come in here and be like, "Hey, this is what's to come." Like, I'm not.
No. I don't want to be the Simpson writers being like, "Oh, we're doing an episode that explains how we predicted the future," and not, "Oh, we haven't fixed any of society's problems, and that's why we're just calling shit because it's the same problems
That's what it
exacerbated."
is.
That's all it is. That's all.
The 20th century has never ended, and it's all the same fucking shit. It's just now we all have nukes, and we're also going to space. So things are going great. Things are good. This movie's good. All right, bye everyone.
Yeah, goodbye. Starship Troopers, a 1997 American military science fiction action film directed by Paul Verhoeven, written by Edward Neumeier. It's based on a book by Robert Heinlein's 1959 novel. Um, Matt, what do you know about the original book?
um, some might call it fascist in nature. Some might call it uh, just pure militarism and jingoism. Others would say it is not that at all in any capacity. And I know that Heinlein in his later years tried to, uh, you know, distance himself from the themes. And some argue that the themes aren't actually present in the book. I actually only read it once. I remember thinking, yeah, this is the propaganda novel in a lot of ways. But I know people make strong arguments that it actually isn't those things. I don't know if I'm good enough to go 100% in on the book. I know that what a lot of people point out is that in the book, there's a lot of debate. Like, there's a lot of teachers going back and forth, being like, well, here is the like military side of things, like here's the democratic side of things, blah blah blah. And I think people go to that being like, see, it's just kind of showing you the two sides of things. And when I remember when I was reading it, that felt like the more insidious thing because it presents like this illusion of choice, you know?
Hmm.
If like Johnny Rico is making the choices to live in this society, and that's not what's really happening. But hey, uh, have you read any Heinlein?
I have not.
He's an important figure in science fiction for what it's worth.
Should I just start with Starship Troopers?
Probably not.
Okay.
Um, what's a good Heinlein one to start with?
What about Stranger in a Strange Land? See, I know the title for that one.
That might be a better one to start with. Um, it's weird. I mean, he's got like The Moon is a Harsh Mistress. I think his like short story collection is he. Hold on, let me look it up real quick. Um, yeah, Have Spacesuit Will Travel, which is like a short story collection, I believe. Oh no, it's a novel. What's his short story collection called then? I know I read one. Um, he's interesting. He definitely has. It's this thing. It's the classic. Like he had a lot of really progressive ideas about like race and like gender and stuff like that. But he also had like this other side to him. You know, he was.
Yeah, like I mean, there are multiple interviews where he describes himself as like a libertarian.
Yeah, which I would definitely. He definitely leans more towards that, and but also that thing of like, I think outsiders looking in view libertarianism as more liberal than it really is, when libertarianism is actually a lot more conservative than it often tries to portray itself. You know,
Hmm.
um, I think even people in libertarianism think they're a lot more liberal than they actually are. But that I would say libertarianism probably fits closer to Heinlein with a certain reverence for the military. But a lot of like he's one of those guys where it's like power armor comes from him. Like that goes back to the Starship Trooper novel.
Oh, really?
Like
Oh, I didn't know that.
a lot of our science fiction concepts you can trace back to someone like it's like Heinlein, like Asimov,
Hmm.
like those guys, and they all have their own problems. Particularly Asimov, who's like definitely doesn't have a great opinion of women. Or like what's his fuck, 2001 Arthur C. Clarke.
Hmm. You
Um,
know, that's super fucking funny. Because here we're debating like the merits and qualities of this guy's work, whether it be like politically agreeable or not. And then now you take like the power armor stuff that pops up in like every version of Fallout, right?
yeah.
And it's like now the guy running that series, which was once a satirical apocalyptic adventure series about choice and consequences. And now the dude running it is just like the most brain dead, white vanilla bread guy possible who has no political thoughts whatsoever
Are
to
we
the point where it kind of ends up leaning more like conservative.
talking about Todd Howard?
I'm talking about Todd Howard, yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
Yes, Todd Howard, who's he seems like a nice guy.
Seems like a nice guy. He's also rich, so
He's also rich and has no
he can take
individual thought.
he can take any criticism we're throwing at him.
Yeah, he has never had a single creative thought in his brain.
I'm trying to think like what because here I like I said I talk just to talk about video games for a second. I have not been able to figure out the appeal of the Elder Scrolls games. You know,
Hmm. And I'm talking shit, and I'm like, oh, I like Skyrim. Yeah.
like what do you like about it?
Oh, this is gonna sound so stupid. I just like the vibe of like walking around. I'm like, oh, the pretty stars at night, and like, oh, look at all these little plants. It's so cool. Like, I just like fantasy bullshit. I'm the type of loser that can just walk around at night on a Friday in the video game, just like, oh, look at all that. Yeah,
You know
so
what?
pretty.
When you say that, you might have gotten closer than anyone I know because the only stuff I ever really remember from that game is the like walking around. And I don't mean that as in a like God, there's too much walking. I'm like, no, that was kind of the enjoyable part of the game.
Yeah, I think it taps into something accidentally about like exploring like a fantasy world. You know, there's just I'm always looking for more, so I can't play a lot of it.
But once you get to like dungeons or anything, like that's when the game kind of grinds to a halt for me. Like that stuff isn't fun.
Yeah, I get really bored when I start fighting people and stuff like that. You know.
Thing sucks, and it there doesn't really seem to be like there is a stealth option, but you can't do much with it.
Hmm.
Very limit to it of just like yeah, I don't know. But those games make so much fucking money. Like it has to be working somehow. Like I just don't know. I just can't figure out how totally.
Yeah, I have no idea. It like breaks the bank every time they re-release it. So I have no fucking idea.
I don't understand it.
Uh,
But
yeah,
hey,
but maybe we can draw a line through people's fascination with the Todd Howard era of Fallout. We can with fascists also really liking Starship Troopers and not getting it
Fallout series, right?
on Amazon, which is just incredibly funny.
Hysterical. What? All right. What are the chances the song "Sabotage" by the Beastie Boys plays in one of the trailers for Fallout, the Amazon series?
I don't know. Why that pull? Why that one for you?
On a gate, like they're playing that song, and the guy's like, "Yeah, man!" Like firing nukes. Like, look at the fucking awesome shit. Like that's.
Did they play that song for any of the trailers for the new
I
Fallout's?
don't think so. They always do the
Okay,
like,
okay.
they always do like the fucking like classical, like the 50s America.
Yeah, I don't want to set the world on fire.
Yeah, it's like
Doom doom doom
the
doom doom.
world of Fallout is like a weird like parody of that. Like if the 50s never stopped,
Yeah,
might be what we're returning to. But
yeah.
but I'm just saying like if you are making a trailer for Amazon and you have no philosophy behind your show,
hmm
and it's just we're gonna blow the fucking shit up. What song do you play? You play "Sabotage" by the Beastie
Sabotage.
Boys.
Now here's the thing. This is tangentially related to Starship Troopers because we're talking about interpretation and political readings and all that, right? The show Fallout is being developed by Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy, who did develop Westworld.
Okay, so it's not gonna be good. Um,
It'll probably have me for a season,
it
and
will
then after
be
that I'll
brain
bounce.
dead action, I assume it will be, but it's gonna be like so ponderous and fucking boring. It's not gonna have any of the satire that like is what makes it fun, you know?
Sure, but here's the next problem. It stars Walton Goggins, Ella Purnell, who's just in Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, and Kyle MacLachlan.
Okay.
So I will tune in for them for at least an episode.
Yeah, they're gonna fuck that whole thing up.
Oh no, I 100% agree.
Like,
But like
do the Elder Scrolls show just because like you can just there's no story there that's worth telling, so you can just do whatever you want.
yeah, just take the imagery of that. I would like that. I'm kind of more into that idea than like a Lord of the Rings series.
Yeah. When does that drop? Isn't that like in like a few days?
At the time of recording, it comes out very soon. I don't know exactly when. I didn't know House of the Dragon started, and that was like a success, a
Yeah. A
successful pilot release.
success.
So,
In quotes.
we'll see. We'll see. I'm willing to bet the HBO guys are not happy that it's a major drop off in Game of Thrones numbers, but
Yeah, because they don't know how
we'll see.
numbers work. But
Yeah.
it seems like people are happy about it. I'm sure
My timeline has had an enthusiastic response of, "Hey, it's better than I expected," or "It's fine."
if your expectations are as low as where they were at the end of Game of Thrones, though, like there's nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, hey, fucking Miguel Sapochnik is an incredible television director.
No,
I bet the pilot's like good to look at.
they spared no expense on any of the Game of Thrones stuff.
Yeah.
They just they just didn't have. I mean, talk about guys with no ideas in their head.
hmm
I mean,
Oh, they did before.
yeah, they kind of did, which is what's weird.
I know, I know. Maybe he's just burnout or something. I don't know.
Or just like
Speaking of someone who's never burnt out, though, how great is Paul Verhoeven?
Verhoeven's great. Okay, so why does this appeal to fascists, and why does Fallout appeal to weirdos? All right, Fallout appeals to weirdos because deep down, I think most Americans want society to collapse.
I actually did see a TikTok recently that was like one of these kids that was like, "Oh no, the zombie apocalypse is happening," and then he cuts to another version of himself. And he's like, "Oh yeah, this is what I've been waiting for my whole life, baby. Let's go!" And then they're like, "Oh, they're running. Oh, they're running. Oh no, it wasn't supposed to be this way."
Yeah,
And it's like that's a very funny joke, but it's also kind of taps into something very real, where it's like these survivalist freaks that think they want like the world to end. It's not gonna be like a fun adventure. It's the world ending, and you can't like anticipate what that's going to look like, and you're definitely not going to be prepared for it, as we are finding out with governments across the globe right now.
Yeah, basically. But what they think it is it's a return to individualism. The rugged
Hmm.
frontier, which no longer exists, which also is something Starship Troopers taps into. You know,
Yeah.
the frontier just doesn't exist anymore because we already killed everyone there. But
It's scared.
it's it's afraid.
There you go. It's afraid.
Uh, but it to survive a disaster takes cooperation. Also, the
Hmm.
people that like jerk themselves off to like survivalist fantasies are always the people that like don't realize that if society stopped moving for 5 minutes, they're the first to die. Like
Yeah.
at least I understand that about myself. Like I don't think most Americans understand that it basically takes an army to keep each and every one of us alive. You know?
Hmm.
Like go to the store, like pick a few things off the shelf. Think about how much it took just to get the food to you. And it's like that's just like one necessity.
Yeah.
It takes armies of people to provide this stuff. It's the only thing keeping us afloat. And so for any of that to stop is just a disaster. And you might have fun shooting people for like 5 days. And then guess what? You're out of water, idiot. Now you gotta drink your own piss, you moron.
You can boil it.
Yeah, yeah. You can buy those.
But how are you going to boil it? You know how to make a fire?
A lot of those survivalist websites will sell those recycle piss things. That
What is that a thing?
yeah, yeah. I mean,
Of course it fucking is. What am I saying?
it's something that honestly we all should be getting attached to our own homes. Like water is a very important resource.
Hmm.
If these things totally work, all you need. So if we put these filters on, we could reuse like a shit ton of water. But everyone's like, "Ew, I'm drinking piss," and it's like you're not. You're recycling it. But you know, I don't even know if guys really think that far ahead when they're thinking about their survivalist fantasies.
Yeah.
You know how much it sucks to take a shit in the woods? Like, what?
It's not good.
Remember how like when the pandemic like started and like toilet paper just disappeared in like 2 days? Like, you know how you know what goes into making toilet paper? We don't want that to stop, you idiot. Like,
Yeah.
notice that Walking Dead doesn't talk about that. Like,
It would break the immersion of the fantasy.
because then you have to think about or like like menstrual products for women. Like,
Hmm.
what the fuck you think's happening?
Yeah, well, that's not a sexy idea.
Yeah, because
The apocalypse should be sexy.
that's the thing. Like, well, that's the thing. Apocalypse, like, Fallout does kind of make the apocalypse sexy, but it's like a satire. And
Yeah.
Starship Troopers makes fascism sexy. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Like,
Well, here, let's talk a little bit about that then. I think we also have to talk a little bit about the cast of the movie because it isn't a blatantly attractive cast of people. You got Casper Van Dien as Johnny Rico, Dina Meyer as Dizzy Flores, Denise Richards, Jake Busey, Neil Patrick Harris, Clancy Brown, Seth Gilliam, Patrick Muldoon, Michael Ironside. Um, Michael Ironside maybe is a little more of an acquired taste, but who is a great actor. uh,
Ironside,
I like Ironside. I'm talking about like conventional attraction.
Rue,
Like, because most of this cast is very conventionally attractive.
yeah, like Rue McClanahan
Yes.
as the blind biology teacher.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, like they look like the cast of a CW show now,
Yeah. Oh,
which it.
CW should totally pick up Starship Troopers.
No.
Oh my god, I would pay money to see that.
Well, here, this gives me the opportunity to talk about my beloved The 100 show again.
Mhm.
Because that show starts off as like a very traditional CWYA drama. It's playing like Radioactive in the pilot episode when these teen survivors land on what they think is an abandoned Earth. And then by the end of the first season, it's like Lord of the Flies. These kids are caught up in like a political struggle on Earth. They're like, half the cast is like gone from the first episode already. And it's just like all these people who are like conventionally attractive, just they got the mud under their fingernails. Everyone's bleeding from like half their orifices. and it's like it's so good because you think it's just gonna be like generic YA slop, and it's like, no, the decisions made by generations before you will scar generations after. And I was like, where the fuck did this show come from? Um, I know it didn't really stick the landing. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but I really like that show, and it has stuck with me. Now the cast of Starship Troopers are all really hot, and also they all end up miserable and alone by the end, or dead.
All friends. They're all friends. Our
Uh,
friendship.
uh,
Scared.
uh, One could argue that. I would not.
They're all friends.
I mean, they get radicalized into a system that's just gonna keep trying to conquer everything and destroy
They're the old guys.
these lives.
They've been in 3 battles.
Hmm. Well, okay, we're gonna talk about that. It's like it's a movie,
Yeah.
so
Hey,
you whittle it down a little.
when did you first see Starship Troopers?
I saw Starship Troopers on HBO around eighth grade,
You know,
ninth grade, and I was like, I liked sci-fi action movies, right? Or maybe I saw it on Sci-Fi then, so I probably saw like an edited version of it.
mhm.
I don't really remember, but I remember like seeing.
By edited, they take out all the boobs and leave a lot of the violence.
Yes, yes, but because I love that sci-fi garbage shit. Which we were talking about before we started recording,
Yes.
like Frankenfish,
Yeah.
um, and I saw like the bug action. I was like, oh, cool. Well, then I catch up with the movie later, and I'm like later in my life, I'm like, oh no, there's there's something else going on here. I didn't have the vocabulary to explain it. Quite frankly, I probably don't now.
I saw
But
Starship Troopers when I was 6 years old
why?
because my dad just didn't give a shit.
Okay.
It's just like, hey, watch this. And
Oh.
I 100% understood it at age 6. No, that's a lie. Actually, you want to hear something? Here's a weird arc I go on with this movie. So I see this movie at age 6, right? And I
Hmm.
take it for what it is because I'm 6. I don't even know what Nazis are. So, like, I just watched the movie, but it's always kind of stuck with me, right?
Yeah.
Of course it would because it's violent as shit. And I kind of just watch it every now and then. I like it. I don't think much of it. All right. Cut to early YouTube days. Bunch of nerd critics online, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Breaking down movies. I see someone does one of Starship Troopers, and they basically are like, Starship Troopers is a dumb movie. There's no characters in it. This guy's name is Johnny Rico, but he's white. Like, this is it. Like, it was someone trying. They were basically trying to like mystery science theater Starship Troopers,
Oh, you fool.
and I am in my early teens, and I'm like, you know what? I haven't really thought about it. Yeah, that movie was kind of dumb now that I think about it, because I don't like, I still don't really understand that the movie's a satire. Like,
Hmm.
I'm like, yeah, if its job was to be a straightforward science fiction film, it kind of failed, right? And I'm like, yeah, okay, that's a take. And then I don't know. At some point, I think I got more into RoboCop, and then I'm like, oh, hey, the guy who made RoboCop made Starship Troopers. Oh, and then like that's when it all clicked. Like it took RoboCop to help me understand Starship Troopers, and then I was like, oh, so it's like a satire, okay. But that was like a controversial take for the longest time. Do you remember? Like you couldn't
Yeah.
say that. Um,
Uh, the understanding I had was that Starship Troopers was a B movie, or just a straight up like
yeah,
guilty pleasure. It's not. It is very intentional with what it's going for, down to like the very almost like sterile lighting. Like because Verhoeven stuff doesn't really look like this. Like it almost looks cheap
yeah.
in a way.
This one especially.
Yeah, it looks like an accessible like television show almost. It
Something that would be on like around Star Trek, like next
yeah, yeah.
like
Hmm.
flipping through the channels, it's like Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, Starship Troopers. Like it's like it's totally of a piece with those shows.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
But do you remember like even when like Red Letter Media dropped like a video on Starship Troopers, right?
Hmm.
Do a very like basic reading of the movie, but it is them being like this is a movie about like fascism, right?
Yeah.
That initially dropped, people like, why are you making this movie political? Like that was 5 years ago. People were like, what are you talking about?
Ugh.
Like, what do you mean? What? And like now I think it's more commonly accepted. Like now it's you're the weirdo if you try to act like there's no politics in it, you know?
Yeah, yeah. And that makes me think about a lot of things. One is that we were allowed like to give and make political readings with art on a much wider scale before. And I know Starship Troopers, we're going to get into it, has a very specific production history, why it exists and how it exists. So it's not like it was across the board. It's not like everything was as radical as this, right? But like even I was talking to a writer pal, Carlos Morales, and he was reading the old Avengers comics, and I believe it's like Avengers 123, 124, or something like that, where a bunch of uh, uh, white national terrorists try to like blow up Avengers Tower. They suicide bomb Avengers Tower to kill the Vision because they think he's like an insult to mankind, and like he's like he's insulting to the white race. And it's like that was just like a comic that was released, and if that happened like today and that was released, like there would be like fucking riots
Yeah.
in the streets, right?
Mhm.
And again, it's not like everything was better back then. I definitely am not saying that. I would never say that. But I do feel like art was allowed more leeway to have more radical ideologies or like
There
progressive beliefs.
there's a benefit to when you're working in like a genre or a medium that like no one's paying attention to, you know?
Hmm.
Like like you can go about like, oh, Marvel Comics, they were big, but like Marvel was like on the verge of bankruptcy multiple times throughout the 70s.
Yeah, yeah.
Like the comic book industry has never been that profitable, so it was this way for people to kind of sneak shit in, you know?
Hmm.
Marvel also had like, they had shit like that, but they also kind of had the like classic like actually all versions of radicalism are wrong.
Yes, of course, of course. Yeah, I don't want to make it sound like it was all hunky dory back in the day.
Fantastic Four fought a guy called the Hate Monger, like, and he's just a clanman. He's a Klansman. I think he wore a purple hood instead of a white hood.
Hmm.
And like the Hate Monger literally just like got people out there being like, down with all people who are different than us. Like, I think that's
But now, to turn it more positive nowadays, while the initial response to the red letter media thing, like you were saying, was like a lot of confusion and outright anger about it, because like the red letter media guys, like sometimes they toe the line a little too much for my liking,
mm,
but they also have like actively pissed off parts of their fan base when they talk about political influence on art,
yeah,
you know. And the fact that now it feels like Starship Troopers, at least for the most part, people get that it's like a horrific satire. I would give them credit for like shining a light on it more, and I think people will be more open to accepting these sorts of ideas regarding art and media, so long as it's just talked about more often, and it feels like that's the main struggle for stuff like this right now, just getting it talked about more.
yeah.
There are other struggles, maybe not the main struggle, but that it's a struggle that we can all participate in and like help stuff like Starship Troopers kind of overcome.
Although I gotta say, like, it's become more accepted, but I wonder what people mean when they say it. You know?
Hmm. Well, I mean, there's also that's a good point. There's also like just the idea that like, oh, it's satirical, it's a comedy, and it's like, yeah, but that's not. It's not
Mhm.
a comedy for most. Like it, I wouldn't really call it a comedy at all. Maybe,
Yeah.
you know, like I think it's just I don't know. People conflate satire and comedy, and that's not the case. You know, I think people consider Deadpool a satire, and it's like not. It's a comedy. It's
Yeah.
not a very good one, but it is a comedy. Um, all the Deadpool films. Good luck, Sean Levy. Thanks for that Stranger Things episode. I will never watch your movies again. But it's weird. I don't know. Maybe there's just no like space for it. We talked about satire before and how like it doesn't really work and how like
There's just a paradox to it they talk about, where like a certain percentage of the population is just going to take it at face value, right?
yeah,
But even then, like I think there's another thing to it, which is just that there are people who understand it's satire, but they don't know what that really means,
yeah.
Go, oh, it's a satire. It's like the thing of I was thinking about this. This is gonna be a weird poll, but I was thinking about this with Blazing Saddles recently, because the movie Nope got me thinking about Blazing Saddles. Um,
That makes a lot of sense actually.
and people will be like, Blazing Saddles is a satire of racism. But I'm like, what do you mean by that? And it shows how racism is ridiculous. And I'm like, yeah, but you know that like the movie is saying more than that, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember someone who was like giving a positive review of Blazing Saddles was like, yeah, but like I like this movie, but I don't really understand why it ends with them like fighting in the film studio, right?
Yeah.
It's like I get like it's a comedy, so they got to be silly, but like I don't get. And it's like no, because like by that point in the movie, they've literally broken the Western genre. Like
Mm.
that's what the movie's about. Like the movie is basically just being like, that like all these Western movies are kind of racist. Like, that's the real satire at hand there, and they go so far with it to expose that by the end they literally are like crashing through other film sets because the Western genre turns out it's fake. It's the fake Rock Ridge that they blow up. Like it's all like the whole Western genre is an illusion, and that's what that movie's about.
Yeah, and even the people that made that film, like Mel Brooks, talented man, legendary filmmaker, artist, even they don't really understand like why it couldn't be made today.
Mhm.
You know, like they think it's like a woke culture or whatever nonsense words that don't mean anything.
Saying that more because I know one time he complained about political correctness, but
He complained about it just the once. To be
yeah,
fair, it was just the one time.
he's like
And
95. Like,
there's also that. Yes, yes, yes. I'm not dragging Mel Brooks.
I'm not gonna.
I would encourage everyone to still watch Blazing Saddles. Um, I think they just it was very much a missed mark in regards for why that film couldn't be made today. I think it's less about audience response. I think it's definitely about just like producers don't want to rile up like feathers politically.
Yeah, well, there's that. There's that. That's the other problem. Is just that like no one wants to upset anyone really, which is a problem.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah.
And people always, when they say that, they think it means like, oh, they don't want to upset the like marginalized people. And it's like those people represent like 2% of the box office. What they really don't want to upset is like the white mainstream,
Yeah.
which is has its own diversity to it. But like that's the group they want to protect at all costs. But but I think it's the thing if people understood that more about Blazing Saddles, you would understand why you just wouldn't even want to make Blazing Saddles today. You know,
Hmm.
like the it's shifted. You know, um, where I feel like you maybe could have done Starship Troopers like recently and it would still work.
Maybe you know what I hesitate to say yes or no to that just because it was also a bomb
Yeah,
when it was released. So
but if it
yeah.
resonates with people. Um, but I mean, this is a movie about the War on Terror, released in 1997, 4 years before the September 11th attacks.
Yeah. Paul Verhoeven could do something about that. I mean, I guess.
No, but here, look, I want to point out how insane this is. It's a fucking 1-to-1
Hmm.
because there's the what do you call it? The bug meteor attack, right?
Right.
It's 9/11. There's the invasion of Klindathu, which is Afghanistan. And then there is the decision we can't control Afghanistan. We have to open up another front, which is the invasion of Iraq. Which the invasion of Iraq was not about weapons of mass destruction. It was about the belief that we needed to open up a new ally in the Middle East, right? That
Hmm.
essentially go in, overthrow a government, rebuild the government with American companies, and install a democracy that was loyal to us, and that would help us open up a sort of wedge between the other factions in there. So like we don't really need to win in Afghanistan, but as long as we hold on to Iraq, we can keep bullying them. You know,
Hmm.
and it turned out neither of those things worked. If you know what happened 5 minutes after this movie ends.
I did not comprehend that whatsoever prior to you just saying that, but I think that tracks.
Of course it does.
Unfortunately, um, yeah, it's pretty upsetting.
Neil Patrick Harris. Let's talk about him in this movie first.
Who also kind of fits like the bill for like what we talked about in the Matrix Resurrection episode,
Mhm.
where it's like he's the new power elite. They the antagonistic force aren't like brawly uh, uh, men in like suits now. It's more of like an approachable, uh, everyday looking like sweet kind of charming guy. That's how you hide like the psychopaths.
What is Neil Patrick Harris famous for at this moment when this movie comes out?
Doogie Howser,
Doogie Howser. What is Doogie Howser about?
the gifted child, right? The surgeon.
He's a surgeon, but also has to balance the troubles of being a teenager,
Hmm.
right?
Yes.
What's this movie saying?
About that in particular.
Doogie Howser is a Nazi, is what it's saying. Because here's the thing: why is something like Doogie Howser popular?
People think it's cute.
People think it's cute, but what does it represent?
That some kids are just better than others.
Some kids are better than others and are worship of intelligence. That intelligence is an inherent good, right?
Hmm.
Which is it's built into our capitalist system that if you're just smart enough, you'll be able to figure it out, right? That
Right.
capitalism will reward the smartest people. It doesn't believe in ethics. It's just intelligence. That ethics will inherently come from intelligence. It's a cornerstone of what we believe in this country. Starship Troopers, the novel, is reflective of that idea that a spacefaring race is an inherently good race, right?
Hmm.
Which is a huge part of the golden age of science fiction, that this sort of progress to space travel is an inherent good, right? I mean,
Right.
but it's all Nazis all the way down. Because who was one of the first rocket scientists?
I, I don't know these names.
Von Braun, man.
Okay, I'm sorry.
What did he do? The V2 rocket. What did the V2 rocket do? It fucking bombed the shit out of London. What was that guy? He was a Nazi. What happened to him? We used him to
We
get to
got
the
him.
moon.
Yeah, that I do know.
So
The names.
I mean, we're talking about, like I said, this would fit in between something like Star Trek. Star Trek is a part of that dream of like, eventually we'll get to space, and then everything's gonna work out, right?
Hmm.
We're no longer constrained by Earth, and it's a socialist utopia, and it's like, no, it doesn't inherently solve society's problems.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, when you watch this movie, it's like it's in a lot of ways this world is more progressive than the world we currently live in. I mean, there's like co-ed showers and shit. Like gender doesn't really seem to be an issue in this future. When we see the football game, it's important that it's a football game, by the way, the most fascist of all the sports. Um, Baseball is the most democratic sport, but football is the fascist one, which is why.
Okay. Do you have stats for that?
No, but this is why football is so popular in the United States and baseball isn't, because we don't really like democracy in this country. We pretend to, but we don't. Um,
I'm telling this to everyone I know in real life, by the way.
that baseball is the democratic sport, and
Yeah, and football is the fascist sport.
just play the speech from the Untouchables. I
I was just gonna plug clips from the last Boy Scout.
remember when he's like, "I get nowhere unless the team wins." Man stands at a plate. I'm going out there for myself, but I get nowhere unless the team wins. Also, Robert De Niro in The Untouchables is doing a Donald Trump impression. He talks, it's like, bootlegging. What is bootlegging? Like, it's 100% Donald Trump. I don't know if that's because Donald Trump was well known enough at that time, or if Donald Trump just sounds like a gangster. But
it could be both. It was 87 when that movie came out, you know? Fucking Robert De Niro's like, Oscar Wallace just died. That's the first I'm hearing about it. That's very sad news.
very sad.
People like alcohol. Many people are saying this.
Many people are saying this. You're just telling me this just now, and wow. Hey. Also, what do we worship more than anything in this country?
Guns.
No.
Really?
One thing we worship more than guns.
The Bible?
No. No, we
You
don't.
got
We
me.
don't worship the Bible at all.
Well, they say they do, but it doesn't. It's just fucking window dressing for their bullshit.
Veterans. We worship veterans more than anything in this country.
I think we worship the idea of them.
Yeah, that's the same thing. It's
Okay.
actually help them. I want to make
Yeah.
it, we just worship them. We worship Jesus too. No one got him off that fucking cross. Apostles stopped by for like 7 days. We're like, ah, looks rough, buddy, and it did nothing. Fucking, what was the one guy was like? They're like, hey, do you know who that guy is? That Jesus. He's like, I don't know him. He's like, are you sure? I was like, I don't know him. It's like, are you really sure? He's like, I said I don't know him. And then he runs up. He denied Jesus 3 times. That shit happens, you know.
Yeah.
Again, Simon of Cyrene, he carried the cross for Jesus for like 2 seconds in the Bible. It's like,
Well, here you're talking about the veteran stuff. This is my favorite fucking. You know what? The movie is kind of funny because there's that line where he's like, "Mobile infantry made me the man I am today," and then it's like an extreme close up on like the robotic limbs and physical scars.
yes.
It's like
Which
so horrible.
I always try to wonder. I've just been super like I've been anti-war my whole life. I don't really know where that comes from. Like, cause like my dad wasn't like a war hawk, but also like wasn't a peacenik. You know.
Hmm.
I just part of me wonders like did Starship Troopers like subliminally get in my head at like age 6 of that shot specifically
Hey, maybe.
of like oh all these guys are missing limbs like war isn't good but
It might have.
mhm. Unless the war is totally justified by an attack on one of our major cities. The only good bug is a dead bug. First sorrow, then anger. This movie is very funny.
Yeah. Maybe I was.
Bugs, frankly, I find the idea of a bug that thinks offensive. That guy's great. I mean, hey, you know what's a cornerstone of fucking 9/11 conspiracy theories?
Lizard people.
Well, there's that, but people being like, "Are you telling me a bunch of guys in caves just came up with this?"
Oh yeah,
Insanely racist, but it's also
yeah.
they think these other people they think they're just dumb. Like
Hmm.
it's just like wow, like so that's what that brain guy is saying.
Yeah.
Like a bug that thinks is offensive to him. Because bugs aren't people; they're bugs. That's why it's okay to shoot them 1,000 times.
Yeah.
Uh,
Um. Before we get more on that,
Veterans rose up and overthrew democracy because it brought us to the brink of collapse. But democracy and the social sciences are the two specific things, and that citizenship is now a reward through federal service. Uh, Also, one of the things I love about it, I love this is something that it's one of these things where this movie's so brilliant. I don't know if like how much of it's intentional or just like they hit the like just the entire vibe of the movie makes it work. There's always that story of like we always figure out how to win the last war by the time we fight the next war, right?
hmm
Like we figured out how to win World War II just in time for Vietnam, right? And we don't know how to win Vietnam. We figured out how to win Vietnam just in time for the War on Terror, which is designed not to be won.
yeah,
You go to boot camp and it's like knife throwing and like They're like obstacle courses. There's laser tag. There's the target shooting, which is another like subtle fucked up thing. It's like we live under a world government, but why are the targets other human beings? It's like, what is that telling you?
Mm-hmm.
Like, uh,
Well, do you know why Paul Verhoeven did Starship
I
Troopers?
believe the story is Paul Verhoeven really wanted to do a movie that was about teenagers, like a coming of age story about teenagers. And the twist was going to be that it was set during Nazi Germany.
That is one of the
They
main things. Yeah,
become Nazis by the end. And they're like, no studio will let you do this.
yeah.
And he was like, okay, I'll do Starship Troopers.
And Starship Troopers was obviously in development before he was signed on to it.
Mm-hmm.
TriStar was undergoing like an executive shift.
It has to be one of those books that was just in development forever.
Yeah. It's like Total Recall. He did this kind of Verhoeven's thing right now, you know. Um, so TriStar is like replacing stuff constantly, or replacing people constantly. So Verhoeven was basically like granted like free production range just because the people who were coming in were like, okay, you know what you're doing, just do your thing. Like no one really had eyes on what was being developed. At least too notably, I'm sure there were some projects that were like they were keyed in on more and more, but Verhoeven got to have fun designing the creatures. I think he even says like, I like science fiction movies. I mean, the Star Wars is delightful, and like he's like he's openly talked about not really finding it that fascinating, but also like he's done everything he wanted to with the genre.
Mm-hmm.
But also he wanted to work with Phil Tippett, who he worked with on RoboCop.
Yes.
Um,
Also, didn't him and Phil Tippett just kind of make like short video of one of the bugs and like showed it to executives? I,
I think so. I think yeah, that's what got them
like that scene of the
like
cow. I think the scene of the cow getting killed is like that was like the original thing they showed the executives was like that scene, like a
yeah, and that kind of gave them like a green light to continue their progress together. Because like it wasn't like in production until like 95, I think, like officially 96 maybe. Like it took them like years to get it off the ground. Like they were working on it, but they weren't like working on it, which is just like absurd.
I also think it was one of those things where like he fell back on it really quick after the failure of Showgirls. Like
Yeah.
I'm all in on this fucking thing.
Hmm.
And like importantly, the Arnold Schwarzenegger starring movie about the Crusades didn't get made.
Yes.
Uh,
Which
some of those ideas carried over into Starship Troopers.
yeah, I think I have that script.
Yeah, it's out there.
Yeah.
Um,
That one's kind of a bummer. I would have really liked to have seen that.
yeah, there's a lot of those, unfortunately.
Yeah.
I mean, hey, Paul Verhoeven's still kicking. You never know; he could pivot back one of these days.
I know he really wants to do that Jesus movie.
Oh,
That I mean, I think that's kind of like what these older directors are doing because, like, Michael Mann just released Heat 2, co-written by Meg Gardner. I'm halfway through it. It's fantastic. It's totally designed to be a movie.
yeah.
Paul Verhoeven's Jesus book is not, but you can see he's like what he's interested in, like to tell the story
Michael Mann,
about the historical Jesus.
because
Michael Mann is a
he
genius.
started
Yes.
his own book imprint that's basically just him being like, studios only give a fuck about IP. Like, I'm gonna make my own IP farm.
Yeah. He's fucking 79. How old is Paul Verhoeven?
Paul Verhoeven's pretty old, or at least he looks old.
He's 84. Fuck, dude.
Fucking let him die making the Jesus movie. God damn.
That's fucking perfect. I was like devouring Paul Verhoeven interviews during the pandemic, like the early like first year at least.
Yeah.
And that dude is just like a treasure trove of knowledge. He's like also a legit genius. I think people kind of underestimate Verhoeven as like an artist, Like he has like a master's in like medieval history and art.
Yeah.
Like he should never stop living.
Like,
Although maybe let's not worry about his
he does
relationships
he does
outside of
come
film.
across as a goof though, is the thing. Like he gives interviews.
No, he's just European.
Yeah, but all Europeans are goofs. They're either
Maybe not the Nazis.
goofs, fascists, or sex weirdos. Those are the three types of Europeans.
He's probably two of those and not the fascist one.
Exactly, but he understands it because he was around it his whole life.
Yeah.
Thank God Americans have no idea what fascism is like. Um,
What's a police state?
hey, anyway, uh, yeah, this is a fucked up movie.
It is a very fucked up movie.
Very good movie though.
Um, Although it's incredibly funny that it's a Touchstone Pictures production
Yes.
because this is technically a Disney film.
Do they own it though? I feel like they don't actually own it.
I don't think so.
Also, if someone has the rights to Starship Troopers, because they're always talking about doing another one, but
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
idiot was like, I want to do Starship Troopers again, but like keep it closer to the novel, which is like, okay, buddy,
Hmm.
don't do that, please. There's also
And
4 spin-off movies and a
oh
cartoon.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do you remember the?
So so there was a talk at one of the New York places. Paul Verhoeven and Casper Van Dien, who plays Johnny Rico, were interviewed for or there was like a Q&A discussion for them. And Casper Van Dien was saying like like all the sequels, whether or not he was even a part of them, because I think he's in one or two of them.
Third one, I believe.
That's fucking crazy. And he was saying like they missed the Verhoeven touch or whatever. And Verhoeven's like, for all of like his fucking wackiness, he seems very respectable towards other artists.
Mhm.
Like he was like, well, they're working with different budgets, and I'm sure their heart was in the right places, and yada yada yada. Like he was really going out his way to like praise stuff he hadn't seen just to make sure he didn't insult anyone. And I'm like, that was like,
We got to
you
remember
didn't
that
have to
the
do
interviews
that.
we get lately, we're getting like humbled Verhoeven,
Yeah, yeah.
like 80s and like mid 90s Verhoeven is like just out of his mind. Like,
He
so
looks like he's on cocaine constantly.
I know. Was he a cocaine guy though?
If you're alive in the '80s, I'm sure you did cocaine.
Yeah.
Like there's no. I'm just saying shit, but also I think everyone understands that I'm correct.
Like I know for a fact what's his fuck who wrote Showgirls was definitely on cocaine,
Oh yeah.
but Joe Esterhaus. But I don't know if Paul Verhoeven was. Um, I feel like his movies would like just be incomprehensible if he was on cocaine. Like cocaine does not really lead to rational decision making.
I was gonna make a bad joke, but I'm not. We're gonna move on.
It gives you a misplaced sense of confidence. Oh shit! Anyone hear that?
I'm sure I can get to it later.
All right, it's the Amazon delivery guy.
I didn't order anything, so I'm actually surprised.
Diego Crespo. Boom.
What the fucking Terminator? God, I want them to team up again before they both retire or can't work anymore.
Someone's got to do King Conan. Paul Verhoeven directing Arnold again with a script by John Milius. Like, just do it. Why
Is
not?
John Milius alive?
Yes, John Milius is like he had a stroke. Like he can't talk, but
Oh,
he still writes.
okay.
And he can't talk like he talks very slowly.
Mm-hmm.
But he was writing King Conan last I heard. But it's also somewhere like no studio wants to do it right now. Because like
Fucking sucks.
Arnold kind of crashed and burned with his comeback, as covered in our Sabotage episode.
Yeah, which is just tragic.
Tragic.
Um, hmm.
You know what else is tragic? Diz dying.
Oh yeah.
Sets me to this fucking day.
Well, cause like it's ostensibly the romantic lead,
Yeah.
right?
And you know what
But
I love about this movie though is this is something that like I think liberals who write movies get wrong.
mhm.
Like you think if this was a worse movie, you get to the scene where Diz dies and Johnny Rico's like, "What was it all for?" Like suddenly has a crisis of consciousness, right? And then like
Mhm.
he's like, "Wait a minute, we're a fascist police state." Like That's where like the dumb version of this movie would go, right? But
Hmm.
instead, Johnny Rico just doubles down on like we're gonna fucking kill every goddamn bug on the fucking planet. Like it's like he just gets worse, which I think is the more realistic reaction.
But yeah, sure. But I think there's a not Starship Troopers, but I think there's another like story world where you can actually explore someone like distancing themselves from like the ideology that they've like
You can. It's
given themselves over to.
not the way the average movie portrays it.
Sure, sure, yeah.
American History X, it's like, oh, he made one black friend in prison and now he's not racist anymore. Like that's not.
Yeah, yeah, like that's very hacky bullshit, you know.
I think there's just so many of these where it's like, why are you anti-war? It's like because I was in Nam and my friends died, right?
Hmm.
No, most of the guys came back and didn't feel that way, honestly.
Yeah.
They felt abandoned by our country because they totally were, but a lot of them were like a lot of them didn't come back with like actually what we did was wrong. I'm sure some of them did, but a lot of them didn't.
Hmm.
Most wars. I mean, World War I, which is a war where like no one won. Most of the soldiers came back and were like, "Yeah, I did my duty." So much so that a certain fucking guy, after being a failed painter, could be like, "We have to get back to our glory times, like World War One, the war we resoundingly lost and got like lost like most of our youth." Like, ugh. I mean, that's something Barry actually did really well. Remember Barry does that scene where he's like, they're like, act out the first time you killed someone,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and like the class like turns it into this big dramatic moment, and like for Barry, it's like the first time he's proud of himself.
yeah.
It's like, hey man, you did it, and like everyone's like, congratulations, and he's like, yeah, I did do it. Kill that guy. Like,
Yeah, I mean that's like the brilliant thing about that show is like he's lying to himself that he can get better.
mhm,
But the show also goes to show that like no, people can change, it's just hard and you got to work at it. But you also have to like want to
mhm.
like be a better person. And there's only like one person on the show who's done that, and it, of course, is Henry Winkler.
Because he's Henry Winkler, god damn it.
Yeah. Something else I want to mention about the placement of certain things in Starship Troopers is, Buenos Aires. We're talking about like the Nazism stuff. You know, a lot of Nazis fled to South America. Like, I don't know how you missed that this movie's like
I
very explicitly political
I
about that.
some people maybe don't know that about the Nazis these days. Like that was something maybe in the '90s you should have known.
Hmm.
I think no one really because we teach like oh the Nazis and then Hitler killed himself. Like that's where the history book ends. You know,
Hmm.
no one talks about Rudolf Hess. Remember Rudolf Hess?
No.
Rudolf Hess, the last man in prison. Rudolf Hess was one of like the top guys in Nazi Germany. He goes over early into the war to like try to sign a peace treaty with Scotland, I believe, and just immediately gets captured. In prison for most of the war. Spoilers: the Nazis lose World War II. He's found guilty of war crimes because he was a member of the Nazi Party, but like nothing severe enough to get death. So the Nazis that got life but not death, they built a prison for him, right?
Hmm.
So it was a prison that they could all just stay in themselves. Uh, he went there. He's the last guy there for I think the last 20 years. I think everyone else died, and then he lived in that prison by himself with like the guards for 20 years. He was the last man in prison, and was all the time petitioning that he should be released. Which his supporters rallied around, although supporters tried to cover up the fact that he was still an avowed Nazi and anti-Semite to his dying day. But no, he was the last man in prison. But don't worry, the story has a happy ending. He hung himself at age 93.
Awesome.
So
Oh, I actually know this fact. And then they destroy the remnants of the prison, right?
yeah, I believe so.
Okay, yeah, because they didn't want not like
Yeah,
the new Nazis to fucking like rally around it or anything
yeah,
like
but
that.
it's like the Fuhrer bunker got like destroyed. You know,
Yeah, fuck them.
I think there's a plaque there now, but like it's not there. So
Yeah. Also, it's like a plaque to be like, yeah, this fucker died.
yeah, that's what it says actually.
Yeah, this fucker died. That's what we should treat these people as. They shouldn't have any like respectable quotes. You should let like fucking just left wing nuts just write that shit. Be like, this fucker died here.
We shouldn't really teach kids like the dates of battles in World War II. We just got to teach them the date of like every prominent Nazi death and how they died.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh, he blew himself up in the Fuhrer bunker. Hitler bit cyanide and then shot himself just to be safe because he was a real coward. That one guy poisoned his whole family. Shout out to fucking, I think that was Goebbels, that fucker. Um, but I believe it was Joseph Mengele was one of the guys that fled to South America and like
Mm.
died there. Like they never caught him. Um, so that happened, unfortunately. You ever see The Boys from Brazil?
No, but I know of that.
What a wild movie of just it's what's his name plays Mangala too, Gregory Peck.
Oh shit.
Gregory Peck plays Mangala. So you know the plot, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's the Nazis that go down to but they're Hitler clones, right?
Well, yeah. Well, it's yeah. He's basically he's found Mangala has like calculated like here are all the people that will like have the exact same genetic traits as Adolf Hitler.
Hmm.
Gave them like clones and stuff like that. And then it's like, okay, Hitler lost his father at a certain age. So now we have to, so all our surviving clones, we have to go and kill their fathers so that they won't
Fucking psychotic movie.
have trauma in their lives. And then Laurence Olivier is like this Nazi hunter that's after them.
Oh, that's fucking awesome.
And yeah, it's a wild movie.
We should honestly have more movies about hunting Nazis.
There really should be. I think one thing that's wild about it though is that uh, that movie comes out and like Mangala dies the next year, and his body isn't found for another 2 years. So when the Boys from Brazil came out, he was still alive. So what I'm saying is the plot of the Boys from Brazil is entirely plausible. Written by Ira Levin, who wrote Rosemary's Baby and
Oh, so it's a banger.
the Stepford Wives.
Okay, that sounds really fucking good now.
It's a wild movie. It's pretty fun. Um,
Okay.
it's just
I
like
mean, we're describing like horrendous shit. We're like, yeah, it sounds really fun. Yeah.
yeah. Well, hey, he's the villain of the movie.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's clearly, it understands that it's bad. It's still fucked up, though.
When Mar-a-Lago got raided, and they're after the nuclear codes that Trump probably gave to the Saudis.
Yeah.
Allegedly, we don't know for sure. Who will ever know? But I wanted to look up that scene from Casino where they go. Remember, they go in that one guy's house and they get books.
Uh-huh.
Those are my mother's books, and then he has a heart attack and dies. Um, you know what's playing on the TV in that scene?
What?
Fucking Boys from Brazil.
Oh my god.
So I went,
Scorsese fucking.
Scorsese, you've done it again.
He has simply not missed.
But hey, so like I guess that's a long way of me saying I can understand people not understanding the Buenos Aires reference. Today, '97.
But hopefully you should now.
Hopefully now you do. If you listen to the Waffle Press, now you get it.
Yeah. You're welcome.
But the more obvious version of the satire is that yeah, they're in South America and they're all like white Aryans. Like
Yeah, yeah.
like that is the more obvious thing going on.
I
Which
could imagine someone being like, "What? This is weird. How come they're all white?"
well,
And it's like, just take a second to think about it.
this is what's fun. You can read it two ways because one, it could be like, okay, whatever world government this is like also like an Aryan nation type thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
That way, or because this movie is a propaganda film, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can read it as this is an in-universe propaganda film, and that of course the in-universe propaganda film would recast all the South Americans with white actors. It works both ways. That's why it's brilliant.
Yeah, Verhoeven's just on another fucking level, and I kind of wish we found someone else to kind of pick up the mantle in a way, not to do the same things as him, but to like be allowed to do like a similar satirical.
will turn up. I think the problem is that now, like, if the problem is, I think if you win it going like I'm gonna do the Paul Verhoeven thing, you're just gonna fail. You know, like
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I want to also reiterate again, this isn't like a it was better when he was doing it. Like, I mean, it is, but it's like I know people don't get the same opportunities they used to. And also, I just don't want someone else trying to do what he was doing. Just similar veins, similar strokes, but with their own voice.
all right. Do you want to talk about Would You Like to Know More? Early,
No.
early internet algorithm. 97. This predicts what Google's going to do to this fucking world. It's the illusion of choice. You think it's like, oh, would you like to know more about this topic? And it directs you to very specific things. It's controlled information.
Hmm.
It's the illusion of choice, man. It's all there. It's all fucking there. I mean, think about it. I watched a video on infrastructure on YouTube like 3 days ago, right? And my YouTube recommendations now are just like weird, like libertarian videos about infrastructure now, right?
Yeah.
And it's an
Hmm.
illusion of like, oh, you want to know more about infrastructure, right? Here are other videos about infrastructure. And I was like, the video I watched was from someone who like has studied this shit. Now you just show me some random guy sitting behind a computer, rambling incoherently, and I bet she's also talking about how the world is flat. Like, it's the algorithm presents this sort of illusion of like, oh, you're just getting more information. Don't worry, it's all the same. And it's like not. Is this TikTok in a nutshell?
A little bit.
So,
Yeah.
just saying, this is 1997.
Yeah, this is why he hasn't done another science fiction film. He
He,
doesn't have anything else left to say. He's got it all right here. So, although I still think he would have made a fucking killer Iron Man too.
was he in talks for that?
No, no, I just think his approach to like the genre stuff especially really fits for what that movie tries to do and doesn't quite get there.
He would have handled the Iron Man thing better than anyone, but it also would have destroyed the planet Earth.
Yeah, that's why it should have happened.
Problem. Like,
Yeah.
because he understands that Tony Stark is a fascist industrialist.
Yeah, yeah. So he like that movie ends with him still being like rewarded by the government for saving the day, right? I think he would have captured the tone of that as appropriately
As
as
depressing
like humanly possible.
of this film is,
Yeah, and appropriately I mean bleakly, you know.
it's like they'll keep fighting and they'll win, which is like the most dire ending to a movie I think I've ever seen.
It's pretty fucking rough.
Yeah, it's
This is a major downer, frankly.
yeah. But you know what? It's enjoyable to watch. So like, it doesn't really kill me in a way that like I think a more direct movie would,
Hmm.
which I think helps with like allowing me to like digest it and talk about it a little better.
Yeah.
Whereas if I just watched a movie kind of about Nazism, it wouldn't work. You know,
Hmm.
like I don't think
Yeah.
Verhoeven's movie set in Nazi Germany would have worked as well as Starship Troopers.
Hmm.
Although he should have directed Jojo Rabbit.
Yeah.
We would have ended with Jojo turning the fucking girl in, and then he becomes a hero to all his friends, which is what probably happened more often.
What's Taika up to?
Probably a shit ton of cocaine.
I thought he would be in hiding.
um, he seems to have no shame.
Yeah, maybe.
He's got a Star Wars to work on.
That's not happening.
Someone out there stop it before
That's don't worry. It's not there's no way.
you never
There's no way that's happening.
know. You never know what's going on behind the scenes.
I guess there's always a chance.
Feige is still supposed to be producing a Star Wars movie. Which, like, what does that even mean?
That one I can kind of see happening though.
But what I'm saying is, like, what's going on behind the scenes there, where it's like, are the heads of Disney like putting the fucking screws to Kathleen Kennedy? I guess is what I'm saying.
Hmm.
Being like, If you fire another fucking director, we're gonna have a fucking problem,
Yeah, maybe.
and we're gonna bring Kevin Feige over just to fucking keep a watch on you because we trust that guy,
Hmm.
and we don't know what I really don't know where Kevin Feige's allegiances lie.
I don't know either. But he gets movies made.
um, Rico's Roughnecks. That's the most depressing scene in the movie.
You think so?
Yes.
All right.
Scene where he's like, where they Ironsides is dead, Diz is dead.
Mm-hmm.
Go back to the planet. The new army is literally children, and he just gives Ironside's speech where he's like, "Everyone fights, no one quits. If you don't follow orders, I'll shoot you myself. You get that? We get you, sir. Roughnecks, Rico's Roughnecks." And then you're like, God damn, Ironside, like the same thing happened with Ironside, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Johnny Rico once. And like he had a guy in charge who said the exact same things and then probably died horribly. And he just copied it. It's like it's just a vicious cycle. Which is just like it's a fucking nightmare is what it is.
Yeah, that's all it is. It's just endless fucking misery, but it's sold as like aspirational.
Yeah.
That's it.
I mean it's
That's
what
all this fucking is.
propaganda is in general. I mean that's why they fucking try to recruit teenagers from like poor schools. You know?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we'll pay for your college education and we'll give you
Yeah, look at where these things are set up. It's a lot of low income areas. They're not around private schools.
shouldn't
It's
even be allowed
gross.
on campus, you fucks.
I know. I know.
Fucking fascists.
Yeah, literal fascist. That's not even like a joke this time.
I actually know
Although I don't think you joke about fascism very much.
I have an acquaintance who I kind of know them, but then like a year into our like friendship, like internet friendship, I suddenly realized, oh, they're in the military. And like they've joined the military, and I've slowly been watching them kind of realize they might have made a mistake. Hasn't been fun to watch, frankly.
Uh-huh.
But it was something where it's like, oh, they recruited me because I came from a broken home. And I'm like, yep, they did. I mean, they do. um, but you know, you make friends. You do make friends in the military. Like,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
you finally have that support structure you didn't have at home. Guess what? It's not going to be there when you get out either. So that's why the only true glory is dying in battle. Great world we live in.
Jesus.
That shower scene where like everyone's naked, so people only think about that part. But like that's another like insanely depressing moment in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It's talking about why they joined up, and the one guy's like, "I got into Harvard but couldn't afford it, and it's going to cost an arm and a leg," and like he literally gets his leg torn off later. Um, the one girl's like, "I want to go into politics." Well, she shoots someone in the head. Um, Other girl's like, "I wanted to have babies." She gets dragged to her death screaming. Like, and the only people that are essentially rewarded are, fucking Jake Busey, because it's like, I'm here to go career. Like everyone else is like distracted. It's almost like again, like if you want to talk about like the other levels of this film, it's like the only people that are really rewarded are the people who are totally committed to the military.
Yeah.
Like Jake Busey just wants to serve to the point where when he's offered a promotion, he's like, "Nah, man, I don't want a promotion. I'm just here to fight, man." Or it's even in the Clancy Brown thing where like he literally got himself bumped back to private just so he could go fight, which is
Mm-hmm.
pure insanity. And he becomes the hero. So Zim got the bug, man. Uh,
What a fucked up movie.
so insane.
It's so good though.
It's also the thing of like Diz is kind of the one punished for like having sex, you know.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
And I'm not saying that's like Paul Verhoeven like having weird hangups. I'm saying that's what the movie is like trying to play with.
Yeah, I don't think those are the kind of hang-ups Paul Verhoeven has about sex. This is the guy that made Showgirls
Uh, This
and Basic Instinct.
Basic Instinct more. 'Cause Showgirls has like a shit ton of sex and nudity, but it's like disgusting.
Yeah, it's also horrendously dark. Yeah, yeah, maybe that was the wrong one, but like yeah,
Another
Basic
movie
Instinct.
with an insanely bleak ending.
Yes.
Like not portrayed as like being bleak. Like it's like you could almost mistake it for being triumphant, you know?
Hmm.
Where it's like, oh, she finally got out of Vegas, and where is she going? Hollywood. It's like, oh no,
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
we could have done Showgirls too.
we could probably do Showgirls for um, failed awards contender.
Yeah, yeah, maybe, maybe.
Um, then he does Hollow Man after this, and then he like fully retreats from American filmmaking.
He's kind of too good for us right now.
Well, Hollow Man is kind of feels like him giving up a little bit. I
Yeah,
mean,
he's openly stated that we will not do Hollow Man. I don't think there's enough to talk about there.
his big take with Hollow Man is that if a guy was invisible, he'd probably be a rapist. Like that's the big take of Hollow Man.
Here's the Hollow Man retrospective. I think it's got a great score. I think some of the thrills are like
Delivers.
the violence delivers. Some of like the thriller set pieces are very well done.
Bacon gives a great performance.
Bacon's terrific. Um,
He really understands that scientific progress in the late 20th, early 21st century is mainly tied to the military.
mhm.
But yeah, other than that, the movie uh, doesn't work.
Yeah, it's not quite there. But again, the Jerry Goldsmith score is outstanding.
Hmm.
It's also just really fucking gross, and yeah,
It's not,
it's not good. Paul Verhoeven would go on to say that his heart really wasn't in that one. He's not very proud of it. It didn't really work. He didn't bring enough of himself to it, and I think it's the one that he's like
you can
least
tell
proud of.
when you watch it.
Yeah.
Um, when I started this episode, I thought we'd talk about like every single scene in this movie, but I think we got it. I think we hit every beat we really needed to hit. Like
Yeah.
the
I
Mac.
don't know. I didn't know how we were gonna talk about it, but we kind of just went into it. I'm like okay with it. Is there anything else you like desperately want to bring up about it?
I like the a murderer was caught this morning and tried today, executed tonight. Like I do like that. That's a really funny moment.
Hmm.
I like the just giving kids like semi-automatic like submachine guns, like full metal jackets, which is probably more accurate to American gun culture than anything else.
Hmm.
Um, which is another thing when I talk about that nerd that like tried to like mystery science theater, fucking Starship Troopers. He was like, "Yeah, give the kid a gun, idiot!" Like really,
Oh.
yeah, really not
Yeah.
getting it. Um, yeah, I'm trying to think. Um, Rigo comes from a rich home. That kid should have just fucking stayed home. But his family are like artsy types. So this is a movie like fucking coming down on artists in a way.
Hmm.
I'd rather take 10 lashes in public square. um, yeah, there's a lot. I mean, it's a lot we could say, but the movie all says it better, you know? I,
Yeah.
I just tried to make the deliberate Nazi and 9/11 connections.
Hmm.
Football.
Oh, and I'll say the jump ball scene was filmed at the Long Beach Pyramid Arena. So shout out, go Beach.
I like how they're like doing flips. Like,
Well, they gotta look cool so you can get like sucked into it.
mhm. Well, it's also like it's showing like like how people like today are like taller and more muscular than they were like 300 years ago and shit like that.
Yeah, yeah.
Is like the shit we put in our food has like changed how we are genetically,
Hmm.
and it's like this is another example of that of just like the scene like our sports arenas like show off physical improvement and how it's changed in human beings, and it's like all just in service of this military apparatus.
Yeah.
Like everything is just that. That's all it is.
I think that's the thing about Verhoeven's like genre stuff, and maybe more than just the genre stuff, but like specifically this, and including your point about Hollow Man. He understands that the military hangs over Western civilization in a way it kind of doesn't in others. Maybe that's kind of a broad statement to make, but I think he recognizes it as a genuinely like
Well, I think
oppressive force.
A, that this is how empires build themselves, and B, America is an empire.
Hmm.
We tried to pretend we weren't for the longest time, but it turns out we are. Like, that's really what he was like. That was the thing where I was like, when I was thinking about it, I'm like, how did he get the Iraq War right, like, before it even happened? And I'm like, oh yeah, but like every empire invades Afghanistan, and like they all fail. Like this isn't the first time it's happened, you know.
Hmm.
He just understands that America is like every empire that came before it, you know.
Hmm.
That's what it is. Um, but hey, it's a
Starship Troopers.
parade. Yeah.
Yeah. Starship Troopers, 5 stars. I don't even need to ask if you're going to recommend it because I know you are.
I've seen this movie so many times too. Like this is one I watch fairly regularly.
I can't.
My sister loves it,
Oh, that's great.
and not in a like. And also, here's weird. Some she doesn't like RoboCop, which is weird. Like she's just like I've never been able to get into RoboCop, but she loves Starship Troopers, and she's not someone who loves it and like doesn't get it. You know, it's
Hmm.
like oh I just like it because it's an action movie. Like she like totally gets that it's a movie about fascism. Like she,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but like she loves it for some reason. So she has rewatched it a lot, which has led to me rewatching it a lot.
Interesting. All right. So we're not going to talk about Total Recall because it's not a failed blockbuster, or RoboCop because that's obviously not a failed blockbuster either. RoboCop, Total Recall, Starship Troopers. What's your pick?
Hey, I looked at my phone for half a second, and Mr. Peanut just tweeted, as a reincarnated 106-year-old peanut, I'm surprised nobody has asked how I keep my shell so youthful after all these years. Would you like to know more?
No. Okay, so Starship Troopers.
Where do I don't know how I rank the Verhoeven stuff. Um, because like I think RoboCop maybe is like the best one, you know.
Hmm.
But I've watched Starship Troopers more.
I think I'm a Total Recall guy.
Total Recall, I totally get that too. That's probably the
Yeah.
best movie of the three.
I think it's the pacing that gets me. The pacing in that thing is just fucking like unbelievable.
Ah,
Um, and then maybe RoboCop. Like it's all fucking subjective. These are like 5-star movies.
but I think for
Um,
me, Starship Troopers might be number one just because I don't think there's another film like it, at least as of right now.
yeah,
There have been a few RoboCop imitators. I think there's a few Total Recall imitators that get.
yeah. They both literally have remakes.
They both look very nice, but like The Matrix is like definitely a take on Total Recall.
Hmm.
Like you can see the pieces there, right?
Yeah,
But I think Starship Troopers like stands apart. You know,
Total Recall.
Total Recall.
We did it. We done did it. It's a great movie.
Great movie, even though it makes you feel miserable by the end.
Yep.
Um,
All right, Matt. We only have two failed blockbusters left.
yes. All right, pick the good one for last, and then pick the bad one for next.
I, I, I don't know because I haven't seen these.
Okay. Oh, I didn't even remember what we picked.
Um.
Let's let fate decide.
Okay. All right. Let me do the little number generator. There's only two choices, but still.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Next week we're talking about Zardoz.
Stardust. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, what's the other one
And
then?
should I just say the last one?
Matter like.
Okay. And the season finale of the failed blockbuster season 2 is Day of the Dolphin.
Day of the Dolphin.
Yeah, which I have not seen, but has maybe.
Day of the Dolphin.
Yeah, but it's also like the greatest film poster I've ever seen in my entire life.
Okay. Um. All right.
Why? What?
I was like, okay, Diego must have a take on Day of the Dolphin.
Nope.
All right. We'll talk about it.
Yeah.
But we'll talk about Zardoz first.
Yeah. So next week, Zardoz, come prepared with all your Sean Connery hot takes.
Just end this episode with the Zardoz head.
Okay.
The gun is good. Because that honestly ties right into this movie.
It kind of does. But until I close out with that little bit, Matt, where can the people find you?
I'm at Emperor OTN1 at twitter.com.
And fucking helicopters, all this fucking noise this episode. And you can find me.
I might be streaming soon, so keep an eye out for that.
Yeah. And you can find me at the Diego Crespo on Twitter. Check out the Waffle Press on Twitter, YouTube, SoundCloud, Spotify, iTunes, and Patreon. And get early access to maybe the last two episodes. And then after that, I don't know.
I think our Gods of Egypt episode was actually longer than this one, but we barely talked about Gods of Egypt.
Yeah, well, there's nothing to talk about with Gods of Egypt. It's like you can finish that in like a paragraph. And be like, yeah, this doesn't work. It's been done better. I liked it. It's sincere.
Doesn't work. Sincere. People look big. The end.
Yeah. Goodbye, Jonathan Demme.
Bye, Jonathan Demme. Goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Zardoz speaks to you, his chosen ones. You have been raised up from brutality to kill the brutals who multiply, and are legion. To this end, Zardoz, your god, gave you the gift of the gun. The gun is good. The gun is good! The penis is evil. The penis shoots seeds and makes new life to poison the earth with a plague of men, as once it was. But the gun shoots death and purifies the earth of the filth of brutals. Go forth and kill. Zardoz has spoken.